Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to have a critique episode where I look at the drawings, the sketches, the designs of the subscribers who have been brave enough to send in their sketches for a little bit of a review, a little bit of a critique. It's an uncharacteristically warm day. We've cracked open the window and the doors to the studio. We've got some fresh air coming in. So without further ado, let's take a look at the first submission. First one coming from Rafael Argomaniz. Rafael is from Chihuahua, Mexico, and he is an industrial design student. So Rafael, let's see what you have. Okay, this is good, Rafael. First impression, because without looking too much in detail, what you're showing here are three very good views, very clear views of your design. As designers work, a lot of times our sketches are all over the place and we have a little bit of this there, a little bit of that there, a little bit of that over there, and we try at some point to bring them in. But what you've tried to do, obviously here, is put one idea in three views on the same page. So it's a very clear, concise direction. Now looking at it slowly, more in detail, Rafael, there are a few things that jump out at me that could easily be improved to make it more, let's call it more professional. There is no depth, what we call depth, to the sketch itself. In other words, it looks very almost 2D on the page. If you're drawing a car in 3/4 perspective like you have here or here, you want the closest part of the car to stand out because that's what you're trying to accent with that perspective. So what you have to learn to do is that this area here, the front part, which is closer, or the rear part, which is closer to your eye view, to be stronger in contrast than the rest of the car as it goes away. Think of a landscape, how things up close have strong color contrast, more saturation, they're more in focus. So what you need to do is remember that as a concept. You want strong lines fading to soft lines as it goes away from you. On the side view, it's not so necessary to do that, but you do want on the side view to give it also a sense of perspective. When you're drawing it in straight on side view like this, I've mentioned it oftentimes before, you can just draw the wheels on the opposite side and show them relatively more inset, more almost like a shorter wheelbase on the other side. It's not that it's shorter, but it's perspective. Also, to add a little bit of the ground line, rough, it doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that, but you need to show that the car actually has a shadow underneath it. So remember always to add a little bit of weight. You've done it here where you have added a bit of darkness to the bottom of the car where it rolls under and catches a lot less light, so that's good too. Always the lines that aren't catching the light are darker than the ones that are catching the light. You do want to use to your advantage the door shut lines to show the section of the door, because at the moment looking at your door section here with these little puddles of light here, it's very difficult still to understand what you're trying to achieve with a section of the car. So remember, if you put a door section line or a door cut line, you can easily describe the surface. I don't know if this is what you're intending, but something like that will always help you to be able to read what the side of the car is doing. Now you have here something a little bit strange. I'm not sure if that's a different body color or if that's a plastic panel or if it's a different material. It kind of looks tacked on, which is never a good idea, almost a bit like a kit car. So these things aren't finessed enough to be considered probably what you would do to a real production car. So elements like this, I would tend to not incorporate them in a design. When you're doing wheels, don't put the boring 5-spoke wheels that we've seen for generations and generations on. Try to think conceptually. If you're thinking about the car conceptually, you should give that same amount of energy to the design of the wheels. So these wheels here have been done over and over and over again. Try to think outside the box, as they say, and come up with wheel designs that look very unique and suit the car especially. Good job. You're a beginner. It looks good for your age. I'm not sure exactly how old you are, but I'm sure you're still fairly young. But this is a good start, and with a few retouches on it, you can bring it to the next level. So thanks very much, Rafael, and hope to see some more work from you in the future. Next one is from Devanga Bora. Devanga is from Gandhinazar, India. been to the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, India. Great school there, great university. And what Devanga's done for us today is an Apple autonomous vehicle. This has been the eternal question. If Apple were to design a car, what would it look like? So what Devanga has done here is create something that looks quite unique, which is absolutely what I think Apple would want to do. I'm trying to find out how it works, Devanga, because at the moment you almost have a coupling of two objects together. So you have that single pod, but also when you attach that to the body, I can imagine you have this swivel mechanism. As you say here, it's a 360-degree movable pod, so it's going to give you a lot of entertainment while you're driving so that you can actually spin around. I think what you've done well here, Devanga, is you've been able to give it a very friendly, almost generic, in the positive sense, design. It looks attractive in the sense that it's not a technical object, it's pure design. It's almost a product more than a vehicle. So something like that does have its attraction because it's something that we haven't really seen before. This could almost be, a sculpture that you see in the museum, except that you've had four wheels attached to it, and it does provide you with transportation. So in that sense, I find it very unique. It's taken me a bit of time, you can see, to get used to it because I've never quite seen anything like this before. And the only thing that I might add here is to have done something with the wheels, because the wheels are something, again, repeating what I said earlier, they are something that add a distinctive character, distinctive personality to the vehicle. And these wheels here pretty much do nothing to the vehicle to add any inspiration or any creativity to the overall design. So look at doing some wheels that are much more advanced. You have them covered on the inside, perhaps you could even cover them on the outside. Another way to look at this, Devanga, at least from my point of view, is that this is actually not something that you personally would buy or own over a long period of time. It's more of a service type vehicle where you pick it up in one place, drive it to another, and you leave it there, and then it gets driven from there with another passenger, another client to another place. But another thing, Devanga, that I would consider a little bit more in depth from the drawings and the renderings that you've sent me is actually the ingress-egress mode. You have basically a half of a circle, a crescent type opening system, almost like a type of gull wing, lateral gull wing type ingress-egress. But something like this, basically, you want it to be as futuristic as possible. There are many ways to do that, but at least the way you've shown it here looks a little bit dated compared to the super advanced look of the vehicle itself. Then one more thing I think that really strikes me as a little bit odd here is the fact that it is so symmetrical from side view. To actually design an object that moves in a certain direction and to not give it that feeling that it's a moving object turns it immediately into a static sculpture. But if you want the product to look a little bit exciting, you do have to give it some movement, some direction to the design, and that's what I think is a little bit lacking in this vehicle here. It does look strange, it looks off. So I would try to think about giving it some of that push to the design, a little bit of dynamic movement. So actually, Devanga, this one has been a really good one because it's been quite difficult for me to critique. I don't really often see designs that don't resemble a car, and this is probably the least resembling car. And that is actually good because it opens a Pandora's box. It opens up a lot of questions about what cars actually should look like or need to look like. And it's great that you've been creative in that sense of being able to realize that a car doesn't have to look like what we think of today as a car being. So in that sense, congratulations. I feel refreshed after seeing this design. But again, you've done something quite unique, and I have to applaud you for that. So thanks very, very much for this critique. Thank you. Moving on, the next one is from Agustin Loitza. Agustin is from Buenos Aires, Argentina. He's 19 years old, and he's a huge admirer of the works of Pagani, of course, Colin Chapman. So he's interested definitely in the world of design, but what he's offering here to look at as a submission is a car that he is currently developing. Actually, he's engineering it from the ground up. It's all unique. From your sketches, it does look to be quite light and agile. I also notice I think you refer to that as El Sapito, which is the little toad, frog toad. So maybe a hint of inspiration from El Sapo. Nice drawings, very nice drawings, Agustin. First of all, I must tell you that I don't like the idea of drawing white lines on a black background. It immediately makes the image a little bit pessimistic, if that can mean anything to you. Some people do like it. I know it's almost a fad right now, or it's becoming a trend. But in my sense, when I look at a drawing like that, it takes away the feeling that you've really drawn it first as an idea. Augustine, you may be more of an engineer than a designer by looking at these images here, because as I'm looking at it from this view here especially, I could almost promise or swear that you've drawn this on top of an existing probably engineering drawing or an image or something that you've developed, perhaps already developed it in 3D. Very nice line quality, I can't deny that. You have a very, very good sketching style. It really looks like it's popping off the page. I think what you need to do here, Augustine, is to free it up a little bit. This car, if you've already taken it to a further stage, I can imagine that this would be the kind of sketches that we do after the car almost already exists, at least in 3D data. What I would prefer to see is what the first sketches were before you arrived at this stage here, because this almost looks like what you would do as a photograph instead of a sketch, ideation sketch. But everything is almost too perfect, if that can be a critique. We like to see looseness, we like to see not mistakes, but thinking within the design sketch. And that's a little bit what I'm missing here. Looking at it from a design point of view, you have two concepts here, I believe, because the top and the bottom don't seem to be exactly the same car. It's almost like this is the, let's call it the estate version, or the shooting brake almost version of this car here. And if this is a future car, then what you want to be sure is that the car looks like it belongs to the future. And the problem here, Augustine, is this car doesn't have a lot of elements of newness to it. It can be beautiful, it can look new, it can be great engineering, but if you're going to see a car that goes down the road and looks like something probably 3 years from now, looks like this, it's going to automatically transmit a feeling not of innovation. You would probably be thinking of something that is more futuristic than a current car, meaning we should be probably looking at something that's electric. I'm not really getting 100% the feel that this car is something that we would see on the road in 5 years. It could be that you're looking for something that is nostalgic in appearance and not really cutting edge, as we say. But again, that has to be your intention from the beginning. And that would just be my critique, that I'm looking at something that could have been on the road some years ago. Again, the proportions of the car are great. It looks quite small. Your headrest here shows me that this guy is either sitting much, much too close to the other side of the car, or that this guy here, this passenger, is sitting quite far away from the side of the car. You don't have much tumble home in this area here. You do want to be careful in a car like this, the way you've shown the headrest, that when you're sitting in the car, Augustine, that your front feet, you don't want the front feet to be hitting anything. I would say that in something about this proportion, this size here, your feet, from a packaging ergonomic point of view, are going to be shifted quite a bit to the center of the car. And if you shift your feet to the center of the car, you're going to have quite a bit of an offset to the bottom, to the legs area. So be careful with that, because a little bit of offset when you're driving is not bad. A lot of offset becomes very, very difficult to get used to over a long period of time. There's a lot of movement, I would imagine, going on underneath the door to allow you to have some type of intake here. But again, you have to be careful that you don't over-deliver on a car when it needs not so much air for a smaller engine. Unless we can control it, we have to be careful that we don't add a lot of drag. air coming into a car has to come out, obviously, and we want to minimize as much as we can the size of a lot of openings. Okay, good. I like the line on the top. The graphic here is very nice. It reminds me a little bit of an older Volvo, if you remember which one. Augustine, it's a pretty design. It's a pretty car. It's rendered probably on top of a 3D model, I would imagine, because it's almost too nice. And that releases the feeling, or that takes away a bit the feeling of being designed. It's more of an engineering type drawing. And although you've sketched it as a designer would sketch it, it almost is lacking the designer touch, the designer feel of a lot of light lines, a lot of thinking as you're designing it. So again, if you want to be a designer, I think you have to loosen up quite a bit over this style here. If you're an engineer or tending to want to do the engineering more, then something like this is perfectly fine to communicate the idea. But again, the experimental stage, the conceptual phase, is always the phase where you can really start to dig into the mentality of the designer, what he's trying to achieve. Again, nice design. I'm still trying to find why you call it El Sapo, El Sapito. But again, I would imagine it's tight, cute, a little bit cuddly, plump in some areas, but still light-footed and very dynamic in the sense that it can move. So good job. Thank you very, very much, Agustin. And again, loosen up a little bit. Let me see those sketches when you get them ready. And still, good job. If this goes into some type of prototype production, let me see it. Thank you. Ciao. So there you have it. Today's critique on some interesting designs from one bandwidth to the other end of the bandwidth, the spectrum. Very different designs. Thanks, guys, for submitting them. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.